أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. لك الحمد حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه، أهل الثناء والمجد، وحق ما قال العبد وكلنا لك عبد. اللهم لا مانع لما أعطيت ولا معطي لما منعت ولا ينفع ذا الجد منك الجد. اللهم نسألك يا رب العالمين كما جمعتنا في بيتك المبارك أن لا نخرج من بيتك إلا وقد غفرت لنا ذنوبنا وكفرت عنا سيئاتنا ونولتنا مرادنا يا رب العالمين. نسألك أن تشفي مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين. نسألك يا رب العالمين أن ترزقنا من الخير كله عاجله وآجله ما علمنا منه وما لم نعلم. اللهم بحق أسمائك الحسنى وصفاتك العلى نسألك فرجا قريبا لإخواننا المستضعفين في غزة وفلسطين. اللهم طالت هذه المحنة عليهم، فنسألك يا ربي نصرا عزيزا مؤزرا لهم ترفع عنهم ما نزل بهم من البلاء والضرر. نشكو إليك دماء قد سفكت وأعراضا هتكت وحرمات انتهكت ومساجد دمرت وبيوتا خربت. اللهم فانتقم لعبادك المؤمنين. نسألك اللهم أن تكون لإخواننا المستضعفين في كل مكان، في السودان وفي اليمن وسوريا وسائر بلاد المسلمين، إنك أنت أعلم بهم منا. اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم إلى نور الفهم، وأكرمنا بزينة العلم، وزين أخلاقنا بالحلم. اللهم نسألك علما نافعا طيبا مباركا يا رب العالمين. We ask Allah, as He gathers us in His house, to gather us in the highest level of paradise. And we ask Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach us that which benefits us, and to benefit us with that He teaches us, and to increase us in beneficial knowledge. Allahumma ameen. We ask Allah to purify our hearts from the diseases and the illnesses of the heart, and to make our hearts humble by His remembrance, and to make our hearts filled with His love and the love of His Prophet and the love of His book. Allahumma ameen, ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Inshallah, today I'm gonna go through a very important concept when it comes to mental flexibility and really understanding the expectations, the definitions that we set for ourselves, that we set for others, that we set for Allah. Are those definitions and opinions based on what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells me and you, or is it based on my own idea, my own mind? And this is very important, because the opposite of having this flexible mentality is to have what we call this mental rigidity, right? To have this rigid mind and rigid ideas and rigid definitions. And a lot of people, they are suffer nowadays because of this. They are suffer because of this mental rigidity that they have, right? Because of these patterns that they have and strict rules that they have set for themselves, and strict expectations that they have set for themselves and they have set for others. And so nowadays, a lot of people, they use their mind and their heart in a way that harm them, that cause pain, more than, it make them feel comfort. It give them sense of comfort and happiness and peace. And this is what this conversation is all about. Is really about, understanding the keys, or finding the keys that we can unlock the heart with. And so Allah, He has blessed us with this soul and with this heart. And yet sometimes, instead of having this heart as a compass that guides us to Allah, we make it as a source of pain that weaken us and that slow us down. So if we think about things that should be constant in our lives, we are speaking about values, about foundations and anchoring foundations that Allah tell me and you. And the question that we have to reflect on, what Allah wants from us. Because Allah, He told us what He wants from me and you. It's not complicated. Like, Allah did not leave us on our own. Allah did not only reveal the book, but He sends messengers and prophets. Why? To harness your strength, to harness your unique strengths, to know that, I should always start from a positive place and not a negative place. And this is what we're going to discover in many incidents that happened during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and how the companions really understand this concept of mental rigidity and not being strict on definitions and thoughts and ideas that we have created for ourselves and for others and for Allah. And so when it comes to, to understanding my value, my anchoring foundation, it is what Allah willed for me in you. It is what Allah, tell me and you about. This is what should be our compass, and this is what should be, our focus. So don't give anything the same value as Allah. In other words, in this life, we give a lot of things the same value as Allah. But then one thing to remember, if you really want to utilize your heart and your mind the way that Allah intends for us to utilize, then don't give anything the same value as Allah. Allah is Allah. A lot of times we have, we encounter some trauma in our life. And we go through different experiences where we develop, traumatic, like we go through traumatic events and experiences. And so we build this, defense mechanism that every time, we try to deal with things in this way. Or because one time I make dua to Allah, and then Allah, He did not fulfill my dua. So therefore, you know what? I'm not going to make dua again. You see how we are protective? You see how sometimes we define safety in a wrong way? Even this is true when it comes to our relationships. The way that we treat ourselves, the way that we treat, even when we treat ourselves. Oh, I know that I'm a sinner. I know that I have done this and that in the past. So what's the, it does not matter if I come back to Allah or not. You see the safety that we built. And it is wrong. And you see this definition that we have now, that this is how I should deal, with myself, or this is how I should deal with my sins, or this is how I should deal with other people. So we attached ourselves to definitions and formulas that we are creating for ourselves. And today, if we don't assess these definitions and formulas, then we are chasing the wrong ideas, and we are chasing false ideas, right? And that's why, again, it's very important that, am I really chasing what matter? Because what matter in this life? وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَجَنَّةٍ عَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضُ. Hasten towards Allah, towards a Jannah that is, humongous, that is tremendous in every aspect. And this is what matter. So when you know that this is what matter, when you know that you are a servant of Allah, and when you know that your final destination is Jannah, then why are you chasing false things and false ideas? You see? So a lot of times we have this idea of what our ideal self should look like, right? That this is who I should be to be accepted. This is how I should act to be loved. This is how I should, this is what I should do to be kind of like marked as successful, as a successful person. But then again, are we chasing the wrong ideas and the false ideas? So are these really roots, or are these rules and ideas rooted in what Allah wants from me and you? And should be the question that I always should ask myself. About everything that I do, about everything that I believe in. Is this rooted in Allah? Is this rooted in what Allah wants from me? Or it is rooted based in my own, or it is rooted in my own definitions and rules that I have created for myself, right? So, subhanallah, every time I ask myself, does that match what Allah wants from me? Or is it centered, as I said, around people, around creation, and so on and so forth? And that's why a lot of us, we are at the mercy of our own minds. When you don't feel it, When you don't feel worshiping, you don't worship Allah. When you don't feel making dua, you don't make dua to Allah. When you are tempted by this dunya, by the desires and the temptations of this dunya, you are at the mercy of your own mind. Why? Because you're not chasing the right thing. And that's why, think about it. I want you to really think and assess a lot of the decisions that we have made. We have made it based on what? Based on our own opinions and own rules and own ideas. And so, humbling our mind is very important. That's what I'm trying to say. And not leading from the mind. There is something that is more intellect, which is the heart. And so today, if we want to live with one thing that is practical, stick to salah. Salah is beautiful. Why is that? Because every time you go to salah, you humble your mind. You humble your mind. And you release all of these rules and ideas and definitions that you have set for yourself. You said, Ya Allah, here is it. I don't want it. I don't want it anymore. And you humble your mind, right? Because you have a higher intellect. And this is why this topic of purification is very important. Because if you allow your heart to lead, then everything gonna be filtered through the lens of faith and the lens of Islam. And when you filter everything through the lens of faith and lens of Islam, how beautiful your life gonna be. I mean, even if that means that you have hardship, you have some hardships, you have challenges, right? But at the end of the day, you know that I'm looking at everything in my life through the lens of my faith, or through the lens of faith. For example, when people tell you 1 + 1 = 2, but you tell them that's not what Allah has taught us, because Allah is the most generous. That's not what Allah has taught us, that 1 + 1 = 2. No, for Allah, Allahu yudha'ifu liman yasha. When you do something good, when you have a good intention, you will be rewarded for it, but not 1 + 1 = 2. You will be rewarded based on the scale and the generosity of Allah. And the generosity of Allah. So, what Allah said about Himself, what Allah said about His path, right? That, وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكَ. So by default, we know that the path of Allah is a path that gonna provide you with what you need. That's gonna provide you with that tranquility and that peace and that and fulfill your ambition and fulfill your goal. And so, are we attaching to this dunya standards or to the akhirah standards? So today is an invitation for all of us to attach ourselves to the akhirah, standards. You find these days people are extremely overburnt or fried. Every time you talk to people, they tell you, complaining about many things. And you think about it, but why? Why people, they feel the sense of being overwhelmed or they are fried, basically. Why? Because you are chasing things that Allah has never told you to chase in the first place. You are demanding things and asking for things that Allah has never asked you to chase or to demand. That's why. I mean, think about it. If you were to break down your life now in 2 pieces, what pieces that you need to let go? What pieces you need to let go? Is it, people's opinion that you are not good enough, that you are not worthy, that, you're not successful? Is it some trauma that you had from the past because of a past experience that you had, maybe, with your parents, or maybe with a friend, or maybe with a spouse? And, so what are the pieces that we need to leave, and what are the pieces that we need to take with us? And this is really a very sincere invitation for us, that the purification of the heart is about really reflecting. It's about stopping and reflecting. Because if we try to follow the route of every weakness, we will not arrive to our destination. If we try to, follow every disease and understand the root of every disease, we're not going to arrive anywhere. Yes, we need to learn about the diseases of the hearts, and we need to have some, implications or applications when it comes to these diseases. How can I deal with it? How can I remedy my heart, and so on and so forth? But, like, we have to understand, we have to have like this universality or universal understanding, I would say. And I'm going to explain myself more, inshallah, when I give more examples also from the seerah of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam. Again, every time you go to sujood, you humble yourself. In sujood, you're humbling yourself, you're humbling your mind, and you're letting go of all of these rigid ideas and rules and thoughts. You're releasing it to Allah and say, Ya Allah, like your values for me is what is important, or what most important. Ya Allah, like your plan for me, it's what's important, what most important to me. Your plan to me, your deen, your commands to me, it's what most important to me. And so you challenge yourself every time you go to sujood, every time you put your forehead on the floor, like you humble yourself and you release all of this negativity that you have, right? Nowadays, we give a lot of value to the brain in an unhealthy way, that we place the brain in a way that is unhealthy in our inner world. In our inner world. That's why a lot of times people, they say, oh, but don't mind me. I have like, I have my 401k, and I'm ready to, retire, and I will have money that will be enough for me to, like travel everywhere, travel the world, and I have saving account for my children so they can continue their education, and all of this is good. Don't get me like wrong. But you see, a lot of times maybe Allah would remove this from you. Maybe, subhanallah, maybe an accident. Maybe Allah will test you with, with the child, and all of this will be, all of these dreams will be destroyed, will be gone. And so what I'm trying to say is that enough with really placing the brain in an unhealthy way in our inner world. Today we need to lead from the heart. We need to purify the heart, and we need to lead from the heart. Even when we speak about, expectations, people really having expectations, because nowadays a lot of people, they have sadness and heaviness. And if you ask them, what's wrong? Why are you sad? Why you feel like your chest is heavy? And they will tell you, because, I have an expectation about this, about that. Now, why do we have the marriage crisis, by the way? Why divorce rates are, in the rise? Why? Because, people, they have expectations. And they have a very specific expectation of how love should look like, or how my spouse should, like, love me, or how my children should, like, treat me, and all of that. And so people, they don't want to, like, they don't want to have responsibilities. They don't want to be committed. They don't want to, like, put the work. They don't want to suffer in the process. And so, yeah, you're going to have this fear in the beginning, because, this fear of discomfort. But wallahi, this pain and fear of discomfort, that you have in the beginning, after you experience the change, and after really you connect your heart with Allah, you're going to find a long-term comfort. And still there's going to be pain also and fear, that a lot of times people, they don't want to change. They don't want to change because they have this fear of discomfort. A lot of things going to change. I'm not going to be able to do this or to do that. And yeah, but I mean, the comfort that you're going to experience after is something that is really worthy for you to let go of things that you don't need, or to really seek the change, to really seek the change that Allah intends for you and for me. And so, again, people nowadays, they are very harsh with themselves. And when I say harsh with themselves, meaning that, they have an idea about what success is. And if I am not there, or if my timeline does not match with the timeline of life, then I'm not worthy, then I'm not good enough. But I mean, who said that? Because Allah, He is telling us that your test is different than mine, that your path, or the plan that Allah has for you, it's different from me. So, كل ميسر لما خلق له. At the end of the day, it is your life, and your life is unique, and your challenges are unique. And so you have to embrace it. Even the challenges, you have to embrace it. Because in that pain and in that hardship, you're going to find comfort and you're going to find happiness. Otherwise, you're going to keep feeling this sadness and this heaviness, in your chest, right? And here there are many examples, but let's conclude this, inshallah, so we can move on with some. I want to mention here, when you feel sad because your life does not look like what you intended for it to be, or when you feel sad because things are not working like your way, then what should you do? Practical, like some practical things. First and foremost, remember that your mind is not your Lord. But, your Lord is Allah, your creator. So sometimes, don't be afraid, like, oh, but I said to myself that I'm going to graduate by the end of this year, and then it's not happening. And, okay, then say, Ya Allah, Ya Rabb. You know better, Ya Allah. Make it easy for me. If your business is not doing well, alhamdulillah, if you've been doing very well, in the past, like, several months, and now the business is not really, going, go back to Allah and say, Ya Allah, I am satisfied with everything, Ya Allah. Give me this yaqeen, give me this trust, and make it easy for me, and give me rizq, give me halal rizq. We said before about sometimes out of hastiness, because sometimes people, they don't want to wait. And Allah is telling you, yes, like this $5,000 or $10,000 that you were supposed to get this year, it's there, it's for you. But then you became very hasty. And you went to ways that are impermissible. And you gained that $5,000 or $10,000. But if you were to wait, wallahi, you would get this $5,000 or $10,000. You see, this is about really pre-choice, because a lot of times people would say, if Allah, He knows that I'm going to go to hellfire, I'm going to go to paradise, why should I, work? Why should I put the effort? Yes, because you have the choice. When we explained before, there are part of the decree that is fixed, that we did not choose our family, we did not choose where to be born at, we did not choose what era to exist in. But there are things that we have choice over. That we have choice over. إِنَّا هَدَيْنَاهُ السَّبِيلَ إِمَّا شَاكِرًا وَإِمَّا كَفُورًا. So it is the choices that you make today. Second, mind creates shoulds and musts. And who gets to decide is Allah. In other words, let's get rid of this absolute language. That I deserve this. That I should get this. I should get that. This is an absolute language, but it's not about your must. It's not about your should. It's about Allah, because Allah is the one who decides and Allah is the one who wills. The third one, and practical example, as I said, whenever you feel sad because your life does not look like the way your mind has defined it for you, what do? You go to sujood. You go to sujood. And every time you go to sujood, you say, Ya Allah, I submit to your plan. I submit to your plan, even if I don't believe in it yet, even if I don't see it yet, but I believe that, it is coming. It is coming. Why? Because word matters. That, the word that you say, that you utter, it matters. And so the words that we use with Allah and we make dua with matters. Because we said last time, are you trying Allah or are you really relying on Allah? Ask yourself this question. And then, who will you be when you tame your nafs? Imagine, have an idea about yourself. How you're going to look like when you really tame your nafs, your soul, your heart. When you really submit to Allah, when you really submit to the plan of Allah, it's very easy to have the same reaction to all experiences. You find people, they're always upset, always agitated. Every time you try to talk to them, they just fire up in your face. And why is that? Because, as I said, a lot of times people, they don't want to change. They don't want to do the hard things nowadays. They don't want to make any sacrifices. We always blame the previous generation. And we always mention like bad things, about maybe the previous generation. Not in a sense that the previous generation, but one of the things that the previous generation, they mastered is really about sacrifice. What is really the real meaning of sacrifice? Because they understood that healthy marriages require sacrifice. And that's what they are really very good in. And I'm not saying here bad in the sense of bad, but I mean between generations, as like a generation that's in, I would say like a newer generation look at the previous generation, I would say, oh, there's a lot of things, a lot of mistakes that you have made in the past. But one of the things that we don't praise or that we don't mention or highlight is that capacity of them really understanding the meaning of healthy marriages, that it requires sacrifice, that it requires hard work, and so on and so forth, right? So today, if it's something that we need to do, if there is something that we need to do, it is root ourselves in Allah's prescriptions and what He has called us to. And really for us to have Allah's prescription and what He called us to override everything else in our life, to override all the unhealthy narratives, to override all the unhealthy influences. One of the beautiful stories of one of the scholars of the lands of Kufa, al-Iraq, was someone by the name of Muharib ibn Dathar. And Muharib ibn Dathar, actually the biographers mentioned that he was heard one day having this soft talking with Allah, doing munajah, having or saying in his soft conversation with Allah the following: Ya Allah, أنا الصغير الذي ربيته فلك الحمد وأنا الضعيف الذي قويته فلك الحمد وأنا الفقير الذي أغنيته فلك الحمد وأنا الغريب الذي وصيته فلك الحمد وأنا الصعلوك الذي مولته فلك الحمد وأنا الساغب الذي أشبعته فلك الحمد وأنا العاري الذي كسوته فلك الحمد وأنا المسافر الذي صاحبته فلك الحمد وأنا الغائب الذي أديته فلك الحمد وأنا الراجل الذي حملته فلك الحمد وأنا المريض الذي شفيته فلك الحمد والداعي الذي أجبته فلك الحمد ربنا ولك الحمد ربنا حمدا على كل نعمة. Very beautiful. They heard him one day with this soft conversation, saying this soft conversation with Allah. Ya Allah, أنا الصغير الذي ربيته. I am that child that you caused to grow, that you nourished, so I become the man that I am now. And then he continues to say, وَأَنَا الضَّعِيفُ الَّذِي قَوَّيْتَهُ. And I am that weak person that you gave strength. Because without you, Ya Allah, I'm weak. And he continues to say, وَأَنَا الْفَقِيرُ الَّذِي أَغْنَيْتَهُ فَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ. And I am the poor person that you enriched, Ya Allah. So all praise due to you, Ya Allah. And he continues to say, وَأَنَا الْغَرِيبُ وَأَنَا الْعَارِ الَّذِي كَسَيْتَهُ. Ya Allah, I'm the naked. I am the naked person that you clothed. So all praise due to you, Ya Allah. And he continues to say, I am the lonely single person. Remember how when you were this lonely person, and Allah, He married you off. So now you're not by yourself, you're not lonely. And not only that, but Allah, He has blessed you with children. And remember when you were an individual who is lonely, but then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He married you off. So all praise due to you, Ya Allah. وَأَنَا الْمُسَافِرُ الَّذِي صَاحَبْتَهُ فَلَكَ الْحَمْدُ. Ya Allah, I am the traveler that you accompanied in all of his travels. Imagine Allah being with you. وَهُوَ مَعَكُمْ. in everything that you do, even if sometimes that we forget that Allah is with us. But here he's saying, Ya Allah, lak alhamd, because you were with me in every travel. You accompany me in all my journeys. And then he said, وَأَنَا الْغَرِيبُ وَأَنَا الْغَرِيبُ وَأَنَا الْغَائِبُ الَّذِي أَدَّيْتَهُ. And I am, like the stranger, did not know anybody. And Allah, He provided you with friends. He provided you with family. He provided you with brothers, and so on. And then you carried me. وَأَنَا الْمُسَافِرُ الَّذِي حَمَلْتَهُ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He carried us. I mean, in the past, horses and camels, and now cars. That you don't have to walk, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you drive now. Like, I don't walk, I drive, right? And so then He said, Ya Allah, all praise, meaning continuous praise and pure praise, be for the fact that I praised you. And that you did not make me kanud. Inna al-insana li rabbihi lakanud. Meaning kanud, meaning denying, a denier of his Lord. A lot of people, they deny Allah nowadays. They think that all what they have is because of me, myself, because I am intelligent, I am smart, I work very hard in this life, I build this business, I build this home, I build this wealth. And this is a kanud. This is a human being who is a denier of his Lord. And that default in humanity, subhanallah. People denying God and denying God being good to them nowadays. And all what we count is misfortunates. But what about counting the fortunates? What about counting the blessings? Because وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تُحْصُوهَا. In this age that we live, it is the age of entitlement. And when I say entitlement, meaning that people, they don't realize that Allah, has fashioned them beautifully. Allah, He has fashioned us beautifully. That's why nowadays people, they want to change the way they look. You find people complaining, I am too short, I am too tall, I'm tall, I'm short, I'm thick, I'm thin, I wish I can be skinnier, I wish. And so, you find people, what can I do to change my look? And where did you get this from? Who did tell you that you need to change the way that you look? Or that you need to change your name? You are beautiful. If Allah is telling us that خَلَقَكُمْ صَوَّرَكُمْ فَأَحْسَنَ صُوَرَكُمْ, that He created you in the best fashion, in the best way, in the best form. And that's why Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he says, why did God send prophets and revelation? Why? Why did Allah send us prophets and revelation? Because He said, look what He said, because treating the soul, the personality, is harder than, remedying the body. Treating the soul, remedy the soul is much harder than remedying the bodies. And that's why if you try to remedy the soul based on your opinion, what happens? When you hardly know anything about your nature. What happens nowadays? We try to rely on our opinions and on our rules. But I mean, what do you know about the soul? Because Allah is the one who created it. And so how can you rely on your opinions when you hardly know anything about the nature of your soul? And he said that this is more foolish than someone trying to treat or remedy his own body. Sometimes we have fever, we try to guess. Sometimes we have like a stomach pain, we try to guess. But then when your heart is diseased, when your heart is ill, then how do you treat it? Do you treat it based on your opinion that, I think I need to, give myself, or engage in more fun and entertainment, and I need vacation, right? That's what people are good in doing. I need vacation, right? I need, because I'm... Right, but what about here the soul? Because treating the soul is harder than remedying the body. What did the Prophet ﷺ came to show us? That harness your unique strengths. Harness your unique strengths. Harness your unique characteristics. Look at this companion, his name Al-Ashaj ibn Qais. قال له النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن فيك لخلقين يحبهما الله. قلت وما هما يا رسول الله؟ قال الحلم والحياء. قال الحلم والحياء. قلت قديما كان أو حديثا؟ يعني هؤلاء الصفات هي مني، من عملي، من جهدي، أم هي شيء قديم الله عز وجل أودعهما فيه؟ فماذا قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم؟ قال قديما. قلت الحمد لله الذي جبلني على خلقين أحبهما الله. And the story of Al-Ashaj, it's a very foundational story. Because one time he went with his tribe to Medina, to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, to visit the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And what happened that his people, when they arrived, they dismounted the camels and they ran to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, forgetting about their chief, Al-Ashaj. He's the chief of the tribe. And so what Al-Ashaj did, he was not hasty. What he did, he dismounted his camel, he tied his camel, and he tied their camels as well. And then he looked at himself and he said, maybe, we've been through a long way, and my clothes, or my garment is dusty. So I have one in the bag, let me go and, change. And that's what he did, to be more presentable. And then he went to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and he did not blame his people because he knew how his people, or how excited his people was. But then when the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he saw him, what he told him, you have two qualities that Allah loves. And what are these qualities? He said, hilm. You have forbearance, that you can put up with insult. You can put up with insult, that you're not holding it against them now. Not telling them, you didn't enter and start, yelling at them and just, shaming them, right? And what else? Wal-ana. Deliberation. The fact that, you slow down, that you are not hasty, that you are thoughtful and not hasty. And then look what he asked. He asked a very important question. He said, did I develop these two qualities? Is it from me? Do I get credit for it? Or did Allah give me these two? And he said, no, this is the way that Allah defaulted you. This is the way that Allah, this is your nature, the way that Allah created you. And then what he said, all credit is to Allah who gave me these two qualities. So all praise due to Allah, that he blessed me with these two qualities that are beloved to him and to his messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. Look, the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam also, he did not also, reject the idea of qualities and characteristics that we can develop. He didn't say, no, there's no such that, you can develop characteristics or qualities, or such qualities or characteristics. No. But he tried to bring his attention to things that are easier, to things that are already instilled in him. And that's really to harness your unique strengths, to harness your unique, characteristics, and to start from, begin with positives and not the negatives. Also here, Ibn al-Qayyim, rahimahullah, says that people, they don't know how to handle their nature. People, they don't know how to handle their default. Whether you are an angry person or you are an impatient person. And he gave this very solid example, actually. He said, people, they get overrun by their nature. Why? Because they don't know how to deal with their nature, how to deal with their default. And he gave this example of a seasonal flood. And he said, imagine that you are in a town and you are about to experience, or that every year you experience this huge flood that destroys everything. Then how are you going to deal with it? And he said that people in dealing with this, they are, into four categories. And the first one, he said that, people, like a lot of us sometimes, would neglect the fact that there is a flood coming. And they would say that, whatever Allah willed, whatever Allah decreed gonna happen. So don't worry about nothing. And what they gonna end? They're going to end destroying themselves, destroying their town. And the second category is the people who said, you know what, let's go ahead and build up a wall. And so, at least we can block water. But little did they know that when the water comes, like they cannot confront the force of nature. Because what happened, that the water comes, they temporarily block the water, but it keeps build up. And then it happened that a crack in the wall, and then, the water destroyed them. And for the third category, he said that, a group of people said, you know what, we cannot let this happen over and over again. We have to, understand the root of this flood, where it's coming from. So we have to go and find out where this flood is coming from. And what happened, they went and they did not come back. Why? Because life is short. As I said, sometimes we think that we are able to tackle every weakness that we have, or deal with every weakness that we have. But life is short. And then, the fourth one, what they said, listen, they said, let's be practical. We're not going to be able to stop it, but what we can do, we can build sort of channels. So when the water comes, we can distract the water. And instead of having the water comes at us, we can, distract the water and redirect the water into our farmlands. And these are the rightly guided. These are the rightly guided. Why? Because they realized that, the very force of nature that could overrun you could be the flood that is redirected to grow your rose gardens. And so that very challenge and that very dark quality that you have, it can be redirected to grow your rose gardens. And I'm going to end with this. One thing about the Quran that is very solid and important, that Quran does not change. That Quran does not change. The word of Allah does not change. But we can change. So if we keep this in mind, that every time really we come to the book of Allah and we root ourselves and we root our faith in Allah and in the words of Allah, then we will be rightly guided, inshallah. We will be rightly guided. We ask Allah to make us of those who listen to what it said and follow the best of it, and not to be from those who قالوا سمعنا وهم لا يسمعون, that they say we hear and they hear nothing. Allahumma ameen. Sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله